So hello everyone, my name is Makita Brown and I'm an executive coach and team effectiveness facilitator with AIR Consulting.
And hello, I'm Nikki Westhead. I'm based outside of Philadelphia. I'm an executive coach and team coach with AIR Consulting.
Excellent. So we're happy to talk a little bit with our leaders to help them understand what is the experience that your employees, those on your direct team, will have through this team effectiveness journey. It's interesting, we often find there are varying perspectives that people bring to the room when they first start our insight session. We've typically met with all of your employees individually to get some perspectives on their experience in the team. We obviously have access to the team effectiveness survey, so now we have data to complement with that. But then it's game time. We're actually moving into our insights discussion where we're starting to partner together with you and your team virtually or in person.
Yeah.
So what comes up for you when you hear some of the thoughts that our attendees sometimes have in their mind as they're coming in?
I would say absolutely. We get the full spectrum, I think it's fair to say. And it's quite interesting initially that we get a sense of how this team is showing up already when they first get to connect with us and how they hear about this team effectiveness engagement piece of work that we're going to do. So we get to hear people who initially react from different ways. We get the skeptics, the healthy skeptics that wonder, why are we doing this? What's brought us here today? And you want me to bring time into this piece of work. We also get those that have been with the team for quite some time. Perhaps they come in with we've been through this teamwork before, we know how we need to do it. So perhaps they come with less of a curious mind.
Absolutely.
I'd also say maybe we do see those that are super curious, those that want to ask the questions. What are we going to do? When are we going to do it? When do we get the results of the survey? I've seen teams recently be so excited to get to see the first round of the team effectiveness survey. They want to know, how are they doing on productivity? They want to know how they're doing on culture. And I really like to see, too, that the team leader is part of the process. They're not outside of the experience. They're part of the process with us.
Absolutely. And I think that element of you as a leader being a part of the process is so critical. We appreciate that as leaders, there's a lot on your shoulders in terms of really setting this team up for success. But this shared experience that we create through the insight sessions allows you to not to feel alone in that experience. You now have your team as co-creators in figuring out, how do we want to interact? What are the things that we value? How do I get to know each individual in that team in ways that you might not have before? But we're creating space for that type of dialogue that is appreciative in terms of thinking about the future, appreciating our strengths, what has got us here, but also looking forward with a little bit of curiosity, as you mentioned, but also some vulnerability, right? So how do we work through some of that in a way that is safe, that involves everyone, and on the outside of that, I think it's just pure magic.
Well, I'm going to pick up on the vulnerability piece because I think there are a couple of key steps that we use in the process when we first start the team effectiveness engagement with you. So as a team leader, you may feel some vulnerability in stepping into this with us. So we will often have a lot of touch points before, during, and after any of the insight sessions or some of the implementation and reinforcement sessions. So we are co-partnering with you. So you're not in it alone driving this. And I think secondly, there's a really interesting point when we get to use individual assessments. Often teams discover a lot of things about themselves that they weren't aware of, whether it's a new team that's formed or whether you've got people that have worked together. And to your point, vulnerability, there's an honesty that comes out when people might look at, this is where I am on the DISC style, or this is how I show up in the Hogan assessment when I'm thriving, when I'm at my best in this team. And this is maybe how I show up when I'm not thriving. We're able to surface some things about what are the collective conditions that enable each of the team members to be at their best.
And imagine as a leader, now you have that information. You can recognize your team differently. You can, recognize them individually for the gifts that they bring, but also being able to balance and saying, hey, I'm going to partner you with this person because I know you both share a value around this. And your appreciation for data, your style around communicating, that really will help us collectively as a team. And what I have found, again, in the space of co-creation, your team will cheer each other on. I've seen instances where people are raising their hand to take accountability. And imagine the relief that is for you as a leader, particularly with all that you are managing, often outside of your team with many stakeholders. You can feel comfortable that you've left the team in a place where they know how to support each other, and they're also rooting for you and helping you with what you're accountable for as well.
And you're raising a really important point, which is the team effectiveness experience is not standalone from everything that the team is doing. It is integrated into the work you're doing. I've recently worked with a team where the cadence and the rhythm of their regular team meetings started to surface some of the things that they wanted to explore a bit deeper around. Maybe there are more dominant voices in the room because there are some that are louder. There are those who are quieter but are not invited into the room. They're bringing that into their regular team meetings. So one thing I would say for the team leaders is this is an integrated process. You're going to see it weave in. And one exciting thing I like to see is how the language changes over time, how the teams will often bring in, well, we seem to be focusing more on productivity at the moment, but we're neglecting some of our operating principles. And one of the great kind of products in a way that we have that the team can use is how you want to work together is not just a piece of paper. We encourage the teams to bring them to life, to highlight when they're achieving it, recognizing it, but also to pinpoint when they're not also working within these norms and these operating principles. These are the guidelines that help the team stay within kind of the frame that they said is going to help them be successful.
For sure. And I think one factor of success that we have seen as teams go through this journey, they are more aligned, they understand how to interact with each other, they leverage each other's strengths. But this isn't a standalone exercise, as you mentioned. It starts to create footprints in other areas. And even the individual performance is improved or enhanced through this experience. But what is interesting is it's not a once and done, and having your team and yourself actively participate, it sets you up to sustain this well into the future. And so we have found teams become even better prepared to show up with resilience when the next change happens, or when something in the environment pops that in the past they might not have appreciated. How do we show up around that? How do we recognize our values and what is now being asked of us, particularly as we service a variety of stakeholders, both internally and externally? So again, to me, it's just the investment is worth it, not only for you as a leader, but you will find your teammates actually wanting more opportunities to lead this on their own. And we're creating that muscle that they actually feel empowered to do that.
So building on that, one of the things that I'm now seeing is teams that we've worked with are starting to cascade it into the next level of teams onwards. So they've seen the benefit of it. And in fact, to your point, resilience, I've recently worked with a team that around 3-4 months into the process went through a really tough time. Now, we know in our leadership world that leaders and teams learn so much when they go through tough times together. They learn about what resilience behaviors can help them collectively as well as individually. So to your point, team leaders and teams kind of create a different strength when they go through this process. There's that shared experience. There's common language. They also know that if they keep a focus and the balance between the two elements of the team effectiveness, both productivity and culture, they also get a sense if they're off balance.
Absolutely.
They know that if one of those places are off balance, they can bring it up to notice and for the team to work on. One last point I did want to mention about team leaders again. One of the teams I've worked with has realized that they can't ask so much of the team lead. And the team leader has realized that this team is willing to take on so much more.
Absolutely.
And that's been a huge shift in the team dynamic.
And just as you say that, look at the time that frees up for the leader.
Exactly.
Right? You get some time back to actually do other things. Think about those strategic opportunities, those opportunities to innovate. You now are getting the benefit of that. So I don't know that we can speak to all the benefits, but I would say they are definitely long And we hope that you will take some value from it as you start your journey as well.